The penthouse study reeked of expensive leather and older blood. Kang Tae-min's empire wasn't built on mercy. It was built on fear, precision, and the kind of violence that never made the news. Designer suits couldn't hide what these men truly were. Killers masquerading as businessmen. Predators in tailored wool. Jennifer V. Moore had spent 14 days perfecting her invisibility. The desperate, undocumented worker. The grateful maid who kept her head down and her mouth shut. A black woman in a gray uniform, exactly the kind of person powerful men like Kang learned not to see. The household rules had been crystal clear. Be invisible. Be silent. Be nothing. One mistake in Kang's world didn't get you fired, it got you disappeared. So Jennifer had obeyed. She'd scrubbed floors, changed sheets, arranged flowers, all while watching, always watching, learning guard rotations, security protocols, the rhythm of Kang's brutal kingdom. Until tonight. Until the silenced pistol. Until her body moved before her brain could stop it. 3 seconds of pure Special Forces muscle memory that shattered 2 weeks of careful lies. Now she knelt in her maid's uniform, blade gleaming in her steady hand, while the most dangerous man in Manhattan stared at her like she'd just risen from the dead. They thought she was invisible. They were wrong. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for pressing play. Tell me where you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. 2 weeks earlier, Jennifer V. Moore had stood in the service elevator of the Apex Tower with her shoulders deliberately hunched, her gaze fixed on scuffed sneakers that had seen better days. The gray maid's uniform hung loose on her frame, intentionally oversized, shapeless, designed to erase any hint of the athlete beneath. Her hands, calloused from years gripping rifle stocks and rappelling ropes, now clutched a plastic bucket of cleaning supplies. Hidden among the bottles of bleach and furniture polish was a camera no bigger than a shirt button. The elevator climbed to the 47th floor. Jennifer's reflection in the polished steel doors showed exactly what she needed it to show. A woman with no options, grateful for whatever scraps the world might throw her way. Desperate, harmless, invisible. The doors opened onto a marble foyer that probably cost more than most people earned in a decade. 2 security guards flanked the entrance to the penthouse proper. Korean men with earpieces and the kind of stillness that came from military training. They barely glanced at her. Service workers were part of the furniture in places like this, seen but not registered, there but not there. You're the new girl? The head of household staff, a severe woman named Mrs. Cho, appeared from a side corridor. She looked Jennifer up and down with the kind of assessment usually reserved for livestock. You speak English? Yes, ma'am. Jennifer kept her voice soft, unthreatening. She'd practiced the accent for weeks, just enough immigrant inflection to seem authentic without being difficult to understand. Good. The rules are simple. You clean what you're told to clean. You don't touch anything else. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't make eye contact with Mr. Kang or his guests. You stay in the service areas unless specifically instructed otherwise. Mrs. Cho's expression could have cut glass. Mr. Kang values his privacy. People who forget that don't work here long. Understand? Yes, ma'am, I understand. Your papers are in order? It wasn't really a question. Places like this didn't ask too many questions about documentation. Cheap labor required a certain amount of willful blindness. Jennifer nodded, knowing her forged documents would pass any casual inspection. The FBI's Technical Services Division did excellent work. Mrs. Cho handed her a laminated card, a security pass that would open service doors, but nothing else. You start in the guest wing, bathrooms first, then bedrooms. Touch nothing personal. Move quietly. Be invisible. Be invisible. The irony wasn't lost on Jennifer. She'd spent 6 years in special forces learning to move through hostile territory without being detected. Now she was using those same skills to scrub toilets in a crime lord's fortress. She caught her first glimpse of Kang Tae-min 3 hours into her shift. He emerged from his private office while she was polishing the hallway mirror, close enough to see, far enough to pretend she wasn't there. Tall for a Korean man, probably 6 feet even, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd been trained to fight and never forgotten it. His suit was Armani, his watch Patek Philippe, his eyes absolutely cold as they swept past her without stopping. Jennifer kept her head down, her posture submissive, her hands steady on the cleaning cloth. But she'd seen enough in that brief moment. The slight bulge under his left arm, shoulder holster, the way he positioned himself to keep walls at his back, the split-second assessment he made of every person in his environment, even ones he dismissed as irrelevant. This was a man who'd survived by being smarter and more ruthless than his enemies, a man who noticed everything. Jennifer would need to be very, very careful. That night, back in her studio apartment in Queens, she activated the button camera and uploaded the day's footage to an encrypted server. Guard positions, security panel locations, Kang's daily routine. She typed her report in careful bureau speak, each sentence another brick in the case they were building. Subject maintains tight security but shows patterns. Exploitable weaknesses identified. Recommend continued observation. She didn't mention how Kang's eyes had swept past her in that hallway, didn't mention the small cold thrill of fear that had run down her spine when she'd realized just how dangerous this man was. Sergeant Jennifer Victoria Moore had infiltrated insurgent compounds in Kandahar. She'd extracted assets from hostile territory in Syria. She could handle one Korean crime boss in Manhattan. Her cover was perfect. She was invisible. Nothing could go wrong.
14 days of invisibility had made Jennifer comfortable. Comfortable was dangerous. She was dusting the bookshelves in Kang's private study. Genuine first editions, probably worth more than her supposed annual salary, while he worked at his desk. The scratch of his fountain pen on paper was the only sound. He'd stopped noticing her days ago, the way people stopped noticing wallpaper or air. She'd become part of the room's architecture. The intelligence she'd gathered sat encrypted on FBI servers, financial records photographed while cleaning his office, voice recordings captured by the bug hidden in a decorative vase, guard rotation schedules memorized down to the minute. 2 more weeks and they'd have enough for a warrant. Maybe 3. She could be patient. The study door opened without knocking. Lee Jun-suk, Kang's second-in-command, entered with another Korean man Jennifer didn't recognize. Younger, nervous energy poorly concealed beneath an expensive suit. Lee's expression was unreadable. Tae-min, this is Mr. Park. He has information about the shipment issue. Kang didn't look up from his paperwork. You vouched for him? With my life. Something in Lee's tone made Jennifer's instincts flare. Too formal, too careful. She kept dusting, her back to the room, but every sense suddenly razor-sharp. The stranger's breathing was shallow, rapid, his footsteps hesitant as he approached Kang's desk. Her peripheral vision caught the movement, the stranger's hand sliding inside his jacket. Time fractured into milliseconds. The gun emerged, silenced pistol, already rising toward Kang's head. Professional hit, execution style. Jennifer's body moved before her conscious mind could catalog the threat. 6 years of muscle memory overrode 2 weeks of carefully practiced subservience. 3 steps closed the distance. Her left hand shot out in a blade strike that caught the gunman's wrist, fingers locking around the pressure point that controlled his grip. The gun clattered to the floor. Her right hand moved with practiced efficiency, grabbed the combat knife from his belt holster in the same motion she was already using to drop her weight and torque his arm.
The joint lock was textbook special forces, brutal, designed to break bones if he resisted. He didn't resist. She'd already swept his legs, her knee driving into his spine as he went down, the knife that had been his now pressed precisely against his carotid artery. Exactly the right angle, enough pressure to make the threat clear, not enough to actually cut, yet. 3 seconds, beginning to end. The hitman went limp beneath her, unconscious from the perfectly applied blood choke she'd synchronized with the takedown. Jennifer knelt over him in her shapeless gray uniform, the knife steady in her grip, her breathing controlled despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins.
The study was silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Slowly, Jennifer looked up. Lee Jun-suk stood frozen by the door, his hand halfway to his own weapon, his face a mask of shock that looked almost genuine. Almost. Kang Tae-min had risen from his chair, his fountain pen still in his hand, like he'd been interrupted mid-sentence. His eyes moved from the unconscious gunman to Jennifer's stance, knees positioned for maximum control, blade at the correct killing angle, her non-dominant hand already checking for additional weapons on the body. The kind of efficiency that came from training, from repetition, from being someone other than a desperate maid who cleaned toilets for cash. Kang's voice, when it came, was quiet, dangerously quiet. Who taught you that grip? Jennifer's mind raced through options. Run? Impossible. Guards at every exit. Fight? Suicide against Kang's entire security team. Lie? He'd just watched her disarm a professional killer with techniques no civilian possessed. The knife felt heavy in her hand, the weight of her blown cover heavier still. I can explain, she said, hating how inadequate the words sounded. Kang's expression didn't change. Yes, you will. He pressed a button on his desk. Seconds later, the study filled with armed men. Jennifer didn't resist when they took the knife, didn't fight when they zip-tied her wrists. She'd known this was a possibility from the moment she'd accepted this assignment. She just hadn't expected it to feel like falling.
The penthouse went into lockdown within 90 seconds. Steel shutters descended over windows. Electronic locks engaged on every door with soft, final clicks. Outside the study, Jennifer could hear security teams moving through corridors, checking rooms, securing perimeters. No one in, no one out. She sat zip-tied to a chair in the center of Kang's study, her hands numb behind her back. The unconscious hitman had been dragged away, the gun bagged as evidence, but Kang's eyes hadn't left her once. "Everyone out," he said quietly. The security team filed out without question. Only Lee Jun-suk remained by the door, his expression still carefully blank. "You too." Lee hesitated. "Tae-min, I know what she just did. Leave us." The door closed with a soft click. Jennifer was alone with the Wolf of Manhattan and the man who'd just tried to have him killed. Her FBI training screamed warnings about isolated interrogations, about maintaining cover stories, about never admitting anything without a lawyer present. Her special forces training was quieter but more insistent. Assess, adapt, survive. Kang circled her chair slowly, his footsteps deliberate on the hardwood floor. "That wasn't self-defense," he said. "That was execution-level training, military grade." Jennifer kept her breathing steady. "I panicked. I just grabbed—" "Don't." The word cut like a blade. Kang stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "I've trained men to kill. I know what panic looks like. That wasn't it." He reached down and lifted her right hand by the wrist, his grip firm but not painful. His thumb pressed against the calluses on her palm, the specific pattern that came from weapons training, from gripping pistols and rifles day after day, year after year. "This grip," He demonstrated, positioning her hand exactly as she'd held the knife, is Fairbairn Sykes technique, British Special Air Service, adapted by American Special Forces. His eyes locked on hers. Where did a maid learn to fight like a Green Beret? The specificity of his knowledge was terrifying. Jennifer made a split-second calculation. Total denial wouldn't work. He'd seen too much. But the truth would get her killed. Partial truth, then. The kind that explained enough without revealing everything. I was Army, she said quietly. 82nd Airborne, then selection for Special Forces support. 4 years active duty. All true, as far as it went. Dishonorable discharge. Conduct unbecoming. Nobody hires veterans with bad paper, especially not black women. The lie mixed seamlessly with truth. I needed work, any work. I didn't want trouble, I just reacted. Kang studied her face with the intensity of someone reading a contract for traps. You expect me to believe you went from Special Forces to scrubbing my toilets? People fall further than that every day. Not people with your training. He released her wrist and stepped back, but his gaze remained predatory. You're too controlled, too aware. Even now, zip-tied and surrounded, you're calculating exits and angles of attack. He was right, and they both knew it. Desperate people beg, they cry, they break. You're doing none of those things. Jennifer forced herself to slump, to let her shoulders sag. Please, I need this job. I'll forget what I saw. I'll disappear. You'll never... Stop. Kang's voice was sharp. You saved my life. That man would have put a bullet in my brain if you hadn't moved. So I'm going to make you an offer, instead of having Lee put you in the river. He walked to his desk and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, expensive single malt, probably older than Jennifer. He pressed one into her bound hands. Someone in my organization just tried to kill me in my own home. They bypassed my security. They knew my schedule. They had inside information. He took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving hers. You have skills I need. Find out who sent that man and who helped him get past my guards. Do that, and maybe I let you live. And if I refuse? Then I deliver you to immigration, and you disappear into a detention center until they can verify your very interesting military record. His smile was cold. Something tells me you'd prefer to avoid federal scrutiny. Jennifer's pulse hammered. Her cover was blown. Her target had just made her his investigator. The FBI would classify this as mission failure and pull her out. Except she couldn't leave, couldn't make contact, couldn't do anything but sit in this chair and face the impossible reality. I'll need access, she said finally. Real access, not Maid access. Kang's smile widened slightly. Done. He cut the zip ties with a knife from his desk drawer. Her wrists burned as circulation returned. Who taught you that grip? He asked. Again, softer this time. Jennifer met his eyes. Someone who taught me to survive. Good. Let's see if it's enough. The hitman woke up in a soundproofed room in the penthouse basement, zip-tied to a steel chair bolted to the concrete floor. Jennifer stood in front of him, her maid's uniform replaced by dark tactical pants and a fitted black shirt Kang's people had provided. The change in clothing felt like shedding a skin. Name, she said. The hitman stared through her with the blank expression of a professional. Mid-30s, Korean, fit but not military, probably former Yakuza or Triad muscle. His silence was practiced. Jennifer circled him slowly, reading his body language the way she'd been trained. You were paid through a cutout. Probably got half up front, half on completion. Standard contract work. She stopped behind him, close enough that he'd feel her presence. But someone gave you security codes, building access, guard rotation schedules. That's not standard. Nothing. Not even a flicker. She leaned down, her voice dropping to a whisper. You know what happens to failed assassins in this world. Your employer won't pay the second half, won't extract you. You're already dead. You just haven't stopped breathing yet. Still nothing. Professional to the core. Kang watched from the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. After 20 minutes of Jennifer's interrogation yielding nothing but silence, he stepped forward. Enough. He won't talk. Professionals never do. He nodded to the guards. Take him to the holding room. We'll deal with him later. Back in the study, Jennifer pulled up the security footage on Kang's monitors. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from countless intelligence operations. She felt Kang's presence behind her shoulder, close enough to invade her personal space, testing her, always testing. There, she said, freezing the frame. The timestamp showed Lee Jun-sok entering the lobby with the hitman 90 minutes before the attempt. Your lieutenant vouched for him personally, told security he was cleared. Kang has brought guests before. Watch his body language. Jennifer advanced the footage frame by frame. He's not making eye contact with the cameras. He positions himself to block the facial recognition angle. He knows where every lens is. She pulled up another angle, the service elevator. And here, he takes him up the service route, not the main elevator, avoids the biometric scanners in a residential lift. Kang's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Lee knows my security systems. He helped design them. Exactly. Jennifer turned to face him. This wasn't some outside contractor who got lucky. This was someone in your organization, someone who knew exactly how to bypass every layer of protection you have. I trust my people with my life. The words came out hard, defensive. One of them just proved you shouldn't. The silence stretched between them, taut as a tripwire. Jennifer could see the conflict in Kang's eyes, the warrior who'd survived by trusting no one, warring with the man who'd built a brotherhood on loyalty. Lee and I grew up together, Kang said finally. Same street in Seoul, same hunger, same dreams. His voice was carefully controlled, but something raw flickered beneath. He's saved my life 3 times, taken bullets meant for me. Jennifer pulled up financial records she'd hacked from the building's server, another skill no maid should possess. Then explain why his bank account shows deposits from a shell company registered in the Caymans. 3 payments in the last 2 months, each one within 24 hours of attempts on rival bosses. Kang leaned closer to the screen, his cologne expensive and subtle. For a moment they stood shoulder to shoulder, both trained warriors examining evidence of betrayal. This proves nothing, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. It proves someone's been paying him. It proves he has money he shouldn't have. It proves... Jennifer stopped herself. Pushing too hard would shatter the fragile alliance. It proves we need to dig deeper before we make accusations. Kang straightened, putting distance between them. Why are you helping me? You could have let that man kill me, could have walked away clean. Jennifer met his eyes. Because whoever ordered your death orchestrated this carefully. They'll try again, and next time they might succeed while I'm still in this building. It was a lie wrapped in truth. Her actual reason was buried under layers of classified orders and federal badges. But Kang seemed to accept it. Then we keep digging, together. But if Lee is involved... He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Jennifer understood. In Kang's world, betrayal had only one punishment. She just hoped she could gather enough evidence to prove it before someone else died, or before Kang discovered who she really was.
Jennifer spent the next 3 days moving through the penthouse like a ghost, except now she was a ghost with purpose. Kang had given her security clearance, but kept her close, assigning her as his personal shadow.
Not quite bodyguard, not quite prisoner. The other staff noticed the shift, their sideways glances full of questions they'd never dare ask. She used the ambiguity to her advantage. While the household still saw a maid, she had access to spaces that had been locked before. Lee's private office, his personal files, his laptop, carelessly left open during a meeting. What she found made her skin crawl. Property deeds for a penthouse in Queens, a yacht docked in New Jersey, luxury car purchases, a Bentley, a custom Mercedes, all registered to shell companies, but the paper trail led back to Lee with enough digging. The math was simple. His legitimate salary couldn't cover a tenth of this lifestyle. Her encrypted phone buzzed at 2 a.m. Her FBI handler, Special Agent Morrison. Need status update. 2 weeks overdue for contact. Jennifer typed carefully. Cover intact. Gathering evidence on primary target. The response came immediately. Accelerate timeline. Plant the financial evidence. Force the arrest. We need Kang in custody within 72 hours. She stared at the screen. Something wasn't right. The pieces didn't fit. Lee's betrayal, the assassination attempt, the money flowing through channels that had nothing to do with Kang's legitimate operations, it all pointed somewhere else. Need more time, she typed back. That's an order, Agent Moore. Execute or we pull you out. Jennifer turned off the phone. By day 5, she'd traced Lee's movements through security footage, credit card receipts, and old-fashioned surveillance. He'd been meeting with representatives from the Jade Dragon Triad, Kang's primary rivals. Not once, not twice, 7 times in the past 3 months. Always at neutral locations, always careful.
The evidence spread across Kang's conference table looked like a blueprint for empire building, except the empire wasn't Kang's, it was Lee's. Jennifer had spent 72 hours barely sleeping, cross-referencing financial records with crime scene reports, tracing shell companies through layers of international banking. Kang worked beside her, his knowledge of the underworld filling gaps her federal databases couldn't reach. Together, they'd reconstructed a conspiracy that had been years in the making. Here, Kang tapped a file. Park Min-yoon, rival boss, killed 3 months ago in what looked like a territory dispute. Jennifer pulled up the corresponding financial record. Lee received $200,000 the week after, routed through the same Cayman account. And here, Chen Huang, Jade Dragon Lieutenant, murdered in a way that pointed to my organization. Kang's voice was tight. I didn't order it. I thought it was unauthorized action by one of my captains. I handled it internally. While Lee collected another payment and strengthened his position with the Jade Dragons, Jennifer traced the pattern across a dozen incidents. He's been systematically eliminating rivals on both sides, making it look like your orders, building relationships with the syndicates while positioning you as the problem that needs solving. Kang stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. Once I'm dead, he assumes control. The Jade Dragons back his claim in exchange for territorial concessions. The smaller organizations fall in line or get crushed. He builds an empire on my corpse, using my name, my resources, my people. Jennifer pulled up another file, the money laundering operation that had triggered her original investigation, the one the FBI had assigned her to trace back to Kang. Her hands trembled slightly as the truth crystallized. The financial crimes I was sent to investigate, she said slowly. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the laundered money flowing through your shipping business. It's all Lee's operation, not yours. Kang turned sharply. You were sent? She'd said too much. No walking it back now. I'm FBI, undercover. My mission was to gather evidence on your money laundering network and build a case for your arrest. The silence was deafening. Kang's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the gun Jennifer knew he kept in his desk drawer. Wait, she stood slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Look at the evidence. Actually look at it. Your shipping manifests, your legitimate import-export business. It's clean. But Lee had access. He's been using your infrastructure to move money without your knowledge. So you're telling me I'm innocent? The skepticism in Kang's voice was sharp as broken glass.
I'm telling you you're guilty of plenty, but not what they sent me to prove. Jennifer met his eyes. Your empire is brutal. You've hurt people, but you operate by a code. No civilians in the crossfire, no human trafficking, no drugs on school grounds. Lee's violated every principle you set while using your reputation as cover. Kang studied her for a long moment. Then he reached for his phone. Who are you calling? No one. He set it on the table between them. I'm giving you a chance to call yours. Tell them what you found. Walk away clean. Your mission's over. Jennifer pulled out her encrypted phone. 36 messages from Morrison, each more urgent than the last. She opened a new message, began typing a detailed report about Lee's operation, about the false intelligence that had targeted Kang. The response came within minutes. We don't care about Lee. Bring us Kang. That's the order. You have 24 hours. She stared at the screen. They don't believe me. Or they don't care. Jennifer's laugh was bitter. 3 years building this case. They'd rather arrest the wrong man than admit their intelligence was corrupted. Easier to take down a known crime boss than explain how a lieutenant played everyone, FBI included. Kang poured 2 glasses of whiskey and slid one across the table. So what now, Agent Moore? She picked up the glass, the weight of it solid and real in her hand. Everything she'd worked for, her career, her mission, her identity as a federal agent, it all balanced against a simple truth. The FBI was willing to ignore justice for the sake of a conviction. I don't walk away from fights, especially not from betrayal. Lee played both of us. He's killed people, destroyed lives, violated every code that matters, yours and mine. She drank the whiskey in one swallow. We expose him, together, no matter what my orders say. You understand what you're choosing, your career, your freedom, everything you've built. I became a federal agent because I believed in justice, real justice, not just convictions. Jennifer met Kang's eyes. If I have to choose between my badge and doing what's right, I choose right. Kang raised his glass in a quiet salute. Then we finish this, my way. Our way, Jennifer corrected. Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and merciless. Somewhere in that city, Lee was planning his final move. They'd make sure it was his last. The Lotus Garden restaurant in Koreatown had hosted more peace negotiations than the United Nations. Neutral ground, respected by every syndicate in New York, with enough witnesses to ensure nobody tried anything stupid. Usually, Jennifer stood against the back wall in a dark suit, earpiece in place, blending seamlessly with Kang's security detail. Her hands rested casually at her sides, close to the Glock, holstered beneath her jacket, a weapon she'd requisitioned from Kang's armory without her FBI handler's knowledge, without their permission, without their oversight. Her encrypted phone had been buzzing for hours. She'd finally read Morrison's latest message an hour ago. You are hereby ordered to execute arrest protocols immediately. Failure to comply will result in federal charges, including obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and treason. This is your final warning. She'd turned the phone off. Some bridges you didn't just burn. You napalmed them and salted the earth. The restaurant's private room filled slowly with power players from across the city. Tang Wei-jun of the Jade Dragon Triad, Viktor Sokolov representing the Russian networks, Marcus Washington from the Harlem operations, each surrounded by their own security, each watching everyone else with the paranoid vigilance of predators gathering at a watering hole. Kang sat at the head of the table, looking smaller than Jennifer had ever seen him.
diminished, almost defeated. The performance was perfect, a man buckling under pressure, ready to negotiate surrender. Lee Jun-sok sat at his right hand, playing the loyal lieutenant brilliantly, concerned, protective, positioning himself as the voice of reason, while Kang played the weakened boss. "Gentlemen," Kang began, his voice lacking its usual steel, "I've called you here because the violence has to stop. Territory disputes are costing all of us money, lives, stability." Tang Wei-jun leaned back, supremely confident. "What are you proposing? Redistribution, consolidation, a new arrangement that benefits everyone." Jennifer watched Lee carefully. He shifted almost imperceptibly in his seat, eager, anticipating. This was the moment he'd been engineering for months. Kang appearing weak, willing to negotiate away his empire. The perfect setup for Lee to step in as the stronger alternative. "With respect," Lee said, his tone perfectly calibrated, concerned but firm. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately first, Tae-min. Make sure we're presenting a united front." "No need," Kang waved him off. "These men deserve to hear the truth. I'm tired, Jun-sok, tired of the blood, tired of looking over my shoulder." Viktor Sokolov exchanged glances with Tang. The sharks smelled blood in the water. Jennifer's trained eye caught the tells Lee couldn't quite hide, his right hand drifting toward his phone, probably signaling backup, his gaze flicking toward the kitchen entrance, secondary exit route, the slight tension in his shoulders that came from knowing violence was imminent. She'd spent the morning surveilling the restaurant, found the shooters Lee had positioned on the roof across the street, 3 men with rifles, perfect sightlines through the restaurant's windows, discovered the escape vehicle idling 2 blocks away, mapped every piece of Lee's contingency plan. Now she moved casually along the wall, positioning herself between Lee and his planned exit. Caught Kang's eye across the room, the briefest glance, a fractional nod. Silent communication built over long nights hunting traitors, over shared whiskey and shared truths. "Ready? Ready." "The truth is," Kang continued, his voice dropping lower, forcing everyone to lean in to hear, "someone in this room has been playing us all, orchestrating murders on both sides, making it look like my orders while building relationships with my enemies." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lee's hand moved toward his jacket. Jennifer's hand mirrored the movement, hovering over her own weapon. "Someone who knew my security protocols, my schedules, my weaknesses." Kang's eyes, no longer diminished, locked onto Lee with laser focus. "Someone I trusted like a brother." Lee stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. "Tae-min, what are you—" "Sit down, Jun-sok." Kang's voice was pure ice. "We're not finished." Jennifer saw it then, Lee's fingers tightening on his phone, the signal being sent. Outside, those rooftop shooters would be acquiring targets, the backup plan activating, the trap within the trap springing. Except they'd prepared for this, every piece of Lee's plan mapped and countered. The shooters already neutralized by Kang's people, the escape route blocked, the backup that wouldn't come. Lee's eyes darted around the room, calculating odds, assessing exits. His gaze landed on Jennifer, really saw her for the first time as something other than furniture. Recognition dawned. The maid who'd disarmed an assassin, the woman who'd been investigating him for days. Understanding flooded his face, followed immediately by rage. "You," he breathed. Jennifer smiled coldly. "Me." The room erupted into chaos. Lee's hand emerged from his jacket with a compact pistol, the movement smooth and practiced. But Jennifer was already moving, had been moving the instant she'd seen his muscles tense. She closed the distance in 3 strides, her right hand striking his wrist in the exact pressure point that made his fingers spasm open.
The gun clattered to the floor. Her left hand grabbed his collar, using his forward momentum to throw him off balance. But Lee wasn't some amateur hitman. He recovered instantly, driving an elbow toward her throat. She slipped it, barely, feeling the air displacement as it passed inches from her windpipe. Then the windows exploded inward. Glass shattered across the room as gunfire erupted from multiple directions, not from the rooftop shooters they'd neutralized, but from inside the restaurant itself. Lee's backup plan had a backup plan. Kitchen staff dropped their pretense, pulling weapons from beneath aprons. Two of Victor's security team revealed their true allegiance, swinging guns toward Kang. The room descended into chaos. Syndicate leaders dove for cover. Bodyguards returned fire. Someone overturned the conference table, creating a barrier that wouldn't stop bullets but might slow them. Jennifer moved through the violence like water flowing around stones, fluid, efficient, economical. Years of close-quarters combat training reduced thought to pure instinct. She dropped one shooter with a leg sweep and elbow strike, disarmed another with a joint lock that left him screaming, put a third down with two precisely placed rounds to center mass, all while moving toward Kang. She reached him as a burst of automatic fire tore through the space where he'd been standing a heartbeat earlier. Jennifer's body moved before her mind registered the threat, tackling Kang behind the overturned table, covering him with her own mass as bullets punched through wood above their heads. "Stay down," she shouted over the gunfire. Not a chance. Kang had his own weapon out, returning fire with controlled bursts. Through the smoke and chaos, Lee emerged. Blood streamed from his temple where Jennifer had struck him, but his eyes were clear and cold. His gun, a backup piece, tracked toward Kang with lethal intent. This was always how it ended, Tae-min. You with your outdated honor, me with an empire.
Kang rose slowly from behind cover, his weapon lowered, his face carved from grief and rage. "We were brothers, Jun-sok. We built this together. How could you—" "Brothers?" Lee's laugh was razor-sharp. "You were the boss. I was always the lieutenant, always second, always watching you get the respect, the fear, the power, while I did the dirty work." He steadied his aim. "Honor is for fools. Power is all that matters." His finger tightened on the trigger. Jennifer moved. The technique was identical to the one she'd used in Kang's study 2 weeks ago, the Fairburn Sykes disarm, textbook special forces, executed with mechanical precision. Wrist lock, weapon strip, control position. 3 seconds from start to finish. But this time, Kang saw every movement, understood the sacrifice of blown cover, the choice she'd made to save his life, not once, but twice. Saw her for what she truly was, not Maid, not even FBI agent, but warrior, choosing honor over orders. Lee's gun clattered away. Jennifer had him in a submission hold, his arm torqued at the edge of breaking, when she saw his left hand moving toward something on his belt. "Gun!" she shouted. The backup pistol came up, not aimed at her, aimed past her, at Kang. Jennifer threw herself sideways, putting her body between the weapon and its target. The bullet caught her high in the left shoulder, the impact like being hit with a sledgehammer. She went down hard, her vision whiting out from pain. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Kang roar, a sound of pure primal rage. Saw him move with violence she'd only glimpsed before, disarming Lee and driving him to the ground with strikes that broke bones. Lee's screams cut through the chaos. "Medic!" Kang's voice, commanding, desperate. "Get me a fucking medic!" Strong hands pressed against Jennifer's shoulder, trying to staunch bleeding. Her vision swam. Around her, the gunfire was dying down. Lee's shooters were dead or surrendering. The rival syndicate leaders were emerging from cover, faces shocked, calculating. They'd witnessed everything: Lee's betrayal, his admission, his willingness to violate every code the underworld lived by. Most importantly, they'd seen Kang's honor and Jennifer's loyalty, a maid turned bodyguard willing to take a bullet for her boss. In the criminal world, reputation was currency, and Lee's had just been destroyed in front of every major player in New York. Tong Wei-jun approached slowly, hands visible. "Kang, your lieutenant played us all." "Not my lieutenant anymore." Kang's voice was cold as a grave. He still had one hand pressed to Jennifer's shoulder, the other held a gun pointed at Lee's head. "He's nothing." Lee, broken and bleeding on the floor, looked up at the assembled witnesses, saw his empire crumbling in their eyes, saw the truth spreading even now through the networks he'd tried to control. Justice, Jennifer thought distantly, didn't always need courts. Sometimes exposure was enough. Then the darkness took her.
Jennifer woke to Egyptian cotton sheets and the distant sound of Manhattan traffic 47 floors below. Her left shoulder throbbed with the deep ache of surgical repair, bandaged and immobilized. The private doctor Kang kept on retainer had removed the bullet, patched the damage, and prescribed enough painkillers to drop a horse. She'd refused them, needed a clear head. Her phone, the FBI-issued encrypted one, sat on the nightstand with a single message waiting. She already knew what it would say before she opened it. "Agent Jennifer Victoria Moore, you are hereby terminated from federal service effective immediately. Your actions constitute gross insubordination, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy with known criminal elements. All credentials are revoked. Any attempt to contact this agency will result in immediate arrest. You are on your own." Signed by Morrison. No condolences for the bullet she'd taken. No acknowledgement that she'd been right about Lee. Just bureaucratic severance, clean and cold as a surgical cut. She was burned, disavowed. Everything she'd built over 6 years of service, gone. The strange thing was how little it hurt compared to her shoulder. The door opened quietly. Kang entered carrying a tray with tea and something that smelled like her grandmother's chicken soup. Impossible, since her grandmother had died when Jennifer was 12 and never made Korean food in her life. "You're awake," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "Doctor said you'd sleep another 6 hours at least." Military training. Sleep when you can, wake when you must. Jennifer tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, and accepted Kang's hand, helping her adjust the pillows. "How long?" 3 days. You lost a lot of blood." He sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair he'd apparently occupied for most of those 3 days, judging by the blanket draped over its arm. "Lee's in federal custody. The evidence you gathered, plus testimony from the syndicate leaders, was enough to charge him with 14 counts of murder, conspiracy, and racketeering. And you?" "Clean, for now." Kang's smile was thin. Apparently, when the FBI's star witness is their own disgraced agent, they have to tread carefully. Tang and Victor are backing my version of events, for their own reasons, but still. Jennifer looked at her hands, calloused, scarred, still steady despite everything. "They cut me loose, the Bureau. I'm nobody now." "You took a bullet for me." Kang's voice was quiet, intense. "Why?" The question deserved honesty. "Because you were worth saving. Because in a room full of criminals and federal agents, you were the only one who seemed to care about actual justice." She met his eyes. "And because I'm tired of being invisible, tired of being whatever role the mission requires. For once, I wanted to be seen." Kang reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He set it on her lap carefully, avoiding her injured shoulder. Jennifer opened it with her good hand. Immigration papers, green card application, already approved. Social security documentation, everything official,
legal, bearing her real name, not forged, not temporary, real. "You don't have to hide anymore," Kang said. "You don't have to be what they made you. No more covers, no more pretending to be invisible." "I don't understand." "I'm offering you a position, head of security for my legitimate operations, and yes, I'm transitioning everything to legitimate. The restaurant chains, the import business, the real estate holdings, all legal, all clean." He named a salary that made Jennifer's breath catch. "You'd be seen, valued, respected for who you actually are, not what role you play." Jennifer stared at the papers. Accepting meant abandoning everything she'd been, her career, her identity as a federal agent, the mission-driven purpose that had defined her adult life. "I spent 6 years in the Army and 3 in the FBI," she said slowly. "They trained me to see targets, to categorize people as assets or threats, to sacrifice myself for the mission, always the mission." "And what did you learn?" "That the mission is worthless if you lose yourself in it." Jennifer looked up at him. "You see people. That's what makes you dangerous. You see them clearly, completely, human. That's why I couldn't pull the trigger when I had the chance. That's why I took the bullet." Kang nodded slowly. "So what do you say, Jennifer Victoria Moore? Will you join me?" She thought about invisibility, about all the roles she'd played, soldier, operative, maid, ghost, about spending her life in the shadows, unacknowledged, unseen, about the choice between orders and justice, between institutional loyalty and personal honor. "Yes," she said. 6 weeks later, Jennifer stood in a tailored charcoal suit, custom-fitted, expensive, nothing like the shapeless maid's uniform that had been her disguise. Her shoulder had healed to a dull ache. Her legal status was secure. Her position was legitimate. She stood beside Kang in a conference room, reviewing security protocols for his restaurant expansion, and caught her reflection in the glass. Saw herself clearly for the first time in years, not invisible, not playing a role, just present, seen, real. "They taught me to disappear, to be invisible, to sacrifice myself for the mission, to erase my identity in service of something larger. He taught me the mission is worthless if you lose yourself. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is be seen." Across the city, in kitchens and hotel rooms and corporate offices, others like her moved through their invisible roles. Service workers, domestics, the people powerful men learned not to see. Warriors in disguise, watchers in the shadows. Some would remain unseen by choice. Others would step into the light when the moment demanded it. The choice was theirs to make. Jennifer had made hers, and she'd never been more dangerous. If you made it this far, thank you for your time and your attention. Like, subscribe, and tell me what this story made you feel. This isn't just content, it's a shared experience. And when you're ready, the next story is right here.